All right, so we have two gurus here. One is the quintessential guru who's taught many people, and and the other is a corporate guru, Kaushik, if I may call you that. And let's start with the topic, with this, the career with impact and purpose. Now, when you talk about these two words, Professor Chatterjee and Kaushik, certain professions dovetail very easily into it. Let's say if you are a research scholar or if you are somebody, a special educator. But when you talk about a career with impact and purpose, do you think that they still hold, a lot of truth and relevance if you talk about a corporate career? That's how people understand careers to be. I mean, if you're a singer, you were asked at one time, that's all right, but what do you do for a living? So, Professor Chatterjee, you first, and then Kaushik, you next.
Well, I'm not very sure if corporates spend enough time trying to distinguish between impact and purpose. I'll give you a simple example. I'm asking you to simulate your heartbeat by just, pumping. Well, this fist looks like the heart. So if I ask you to pump 72 times a minute, which is the average rate of beating of the heart, and I'll tell you $100 for doing this for 10 minutes, and then I'll motivate you, and I'll say, let's give you $1,000 for doing it for half an hour. And you'll still do it, you'll be stretched beyond. But then, if I ask you to do it for 1 hour, you will tire and you will stop doing it. The heart is doing this for 2.4 billion times in a lifetime of 65 years. Because the heart has a purpose, the fist has only a goal. A purpose is integration of goals. The heart has to integrate with the goals of the rest of the body. The heart has to slow down when you're meditating. It has to. So pacing up and down, connecting with larger goal systems is what purpose is. If you have no purpose, you will be goal sick and you will fall apart. There is no corporate, there is no individual, there is no leader, there is no manager that can start without a purpose. You may or may not have any specific goal right now, but without that purpose, you can't even live because you are part of an ecosystem which has created you. You have to fulfill many goals just as you're growing up, evolving as a person, as a professional. Over to you.
That is an amazing way to, the heart. So let me actually start with the heart. At work, and I've been at it for, almost 40 years, and I've been with PepsiCo for 24 years. And, this journey is not about the head and the hand. The head and the hand you will have to bring to your job, otherwise you will not survive. You won't be a successful professional. But it's the heart which really takes you the long distance. And I remember when I joined PepsiCo, it was a company where the culture is a little bit like a Fizo culture. You fit in or you shape out. You love it or you hate it. There's no place in the middle. So, and love comes from the heart. So I think Debashis hit the nail on the head. Purpose is about heart. Now our ex-CEO, all of you have heard of her, Indra Nooyi, somebody who we are very, very proud of. An iconic leader heading an iconic American company. She coined this phrase, performance with purpose. Okay, and that is at the heart of what this topic is all about. So, if you look at companies today, and more so, we are focusing on things which are purpose-driven. And value creation earlier, and I'm a CFO, so I can tell you value creation, shareholder value creation used to be historically top line and bottom line. But now it is top line, bottom line, and lifeline. And lifeline is about making the planet a better place. And it is connecting with the heart, it is connecting with purpose. And those companies and those brands who are able to do that will be able to not only survive, but command a premium, have a competitive edge. So purpose is taking a center stage in corporate boardrooms, and it's part of the future agenda.
All right.
And I feel very, very good that we are focusing on that.
All right. Now we'll focus, gentlemen, on the books that you've written and try to dovetail into the concept today. A Career with Impact and Purpose, Professor Chatterjee's 1 Minute Wisdom and Kaushik Mitra's, The Career Edge. Lovely books, both of them. Very anecdotal, very personalized. And that's the success of any book that I feel I can also walk with you, hold your hand as an author and walk. Professor Chatterjee, I started your book and found very riveting that you start with the concept of Satchidananda. which is Sat is the truth or reality, and Chit is consciousness, and Ananda is eternal bliss. And let me quote one line from you. You say that it's as relevant as it is today as it was in ancient times, that wisdom. How relevant is that to a career where we all want to kind of, achieve goals which are already prescribed for us, sir?
Satchidananda is not just a concept. It has a perennial relevance across timelines and space lines. Sat means, in empirical terms, it means real impact. Chit means knowledge that takes you towards that impact. And Ananda means fulfillment that comes as a result of the impact. Now, if you look at the empirical level, this is true. If you look at the transcendental level, this is where the rishis were looking at the word Satchidananda. They said Sat is existence, Chit is awareness, and Ananda is bliss that comes from fulfillment. Look at the entire continuum, and you will see this is the map of the human condition, which is holographic. So human being is not just an isolated entity sitting here. You see, I have a rheumatism because of the cycle of the moon. So I know there is a connection between me and my larger, including corporate environment. But the fact of the matter is, if I ignore, what is a hologram? It's like a cauliflower. You take out one part of the cauliflower, the structure will be the same as the rest of the cauliflower. So the human being represents essentially, existentially, three very important elements. I want reality. If somebody is wearing fake hair or fake flowers, immediately I there's some reaction in me. Because I am reality, and I don't want to see the reality being somebody's telling me untruth. Immediately I will shirk. That simply means that existentially I am committed to my existential reality, which is Sat. Chit is eternal curiosity. It's only the human species that is curious.
Right.
And finally, Ananda is bliss that comes from fulfillment of what you intended to achieve in life. If you can ignore these three, if you can run a corporation without these three, I'll be very happy. But I don't think no corporation exists without human beings, and no human being exists without these three elements. Right. So if they are not perennial, I don't know what is.
Okay. Kaushik, one chapter in your book where in 2015 you went as CFO to Vietnam. And like all of us, great flair for writing, considering we've all studied, British English. But you wrote mails and it never got through to your associates and to your partners. I mean, somehow you felt that either they don't like you or you're not being able to be accepted. And you say that as we go up the ladder, we often become anchored in our own opinions. We are, to keep growing, we must shed that weight. Embracing the humility to learn. Would you like to talk about that, and also how true that is in today's, to have a career which is both impactful and purposeful, as it were?
Yeah, I think, when we started learning, the world was, changing, but not changing. And I'm talking 35 years, 40 years back, right? And the world was changing, and the biggest thing that happened was computers, right? Dot prompt, and, that's the big thing. But today, if I look at, the world is changing at a much, much faster pace. And therefore, what is important is, the other change is, that at that point in time, knowledge was scarce. And today, there's an abundance of knowledge. These are two big changes in terms of the learning atmosphere of our times and now. And therefore, if I look at the first one, as we become, senior and senior, we tend to accumulate baggage. I'll tell you a story. I mean, I've gone from Delhi to Chennai, Chennai to Dubai, Dubai to Hong Kong, Hong Kong to Ho Chi Minh City, and some other places. And we keep carrying the same furniture. I've been married for 30 years, and my wife is attached to some furniture. Knowledge is a little bit like that baggage that we are keeping on carrying to every place. And suddenly we realize in Hong Kong we don't have space for the furniture. The apartment in Hong Kong, the space is a very, very expensive apartment. So knowledge has to be also treated like baggage which you need to shed at times. So it's a process of learn, unlearn, and relearn. And unless you do that, you won't be relevant with the world that is changing so rapidly.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. And quickly, in a world which is changing so rapidly, how does one do that? I mean, you have to keep unlearning, learning, tutoring yourself every day, as it were.
Look, I mean, and this is for the folks who are getting into there, and the students here who are getting into early career, or people earlier in their career. My advice is, when you're starting off, focus on the learning. Do not focus on fancy designations, and do not focus on, the cushy, air-conditioned office jobs. If you're getting into a company which is brand innovation, makes it deliver, go work in the factory. Go work in the sales office. Because you can't build a long-term career. It's like constructing a multi-storied building without a strong foundation. And then the other thing is, don't get fixated with you. The Vietnam story is very, very interesting. I always loved words, but I got stuck with the career juggling numbers. Now I don't tell that to my HR folks. But when I went to Vietnam, I used to write these designer emails, and my team was all Vietnamese and Japanese, and they were completely demotivated. They didn't know what the hell was going on. Till one day my boss came and rapped me on the knuckles and said, "What are you doing? It's not about you." And then I realized that I need to slow down, because the Vietnamese folks were translating my English into Vietnamese, getting the answer back into Vietnamese, and then getting it back to me. So what I thought I was doing very well, and my strength, was a completely demotivator for the team. And therefore, that realization changed everything. And after that, I slowed down, I spoke slowly, I reinforced what people understood. And that has happened to me many times in life, in different places. So this thing about, we know it, and this is how things work. It's the other thing, when you go outside, I realize there is also a cultural pride.
Right.
And as soon as you come and say, okay, this is what I used to do in India, people are put off.
Yeah.
It's a proud country.
Right.
Don't tell me what you used to do in India.
Yeah,
Understand my context first.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
how do you include people? And it's back to that connect of the heart. The brain and the hand is listening to you, but the heart is not connecting, because, there is a big gap.
Just a minute. Can you hear that sound, Rakesh? I think that's blissful. See? Satchidananda. Professor Chatterjee, in your book, you talk about fear, and I don't think there is anybody who's devoid of fear. I mean, I'm not. I'm scared, feared. I mean, I fear most of the times. In a career, doesn't this emotion play a very important role, not a negative, as it perhaps propels people like me to stay on course? But you know what you say in your book, and this is very, very interesting indeed. Fear sharpens focus and builds walls of protection. It is necessary, yet incomplete. So, what does fear do, Professor Chatterjee, to someone pursuing a career seriously? I'm adding that bit seriously because, again, esoteric careers are seen to be non-serious, which Kaushik and I were speaking at the breakfast table, but that of which later. Yeah.
So there is a thin line between carefulness and fearfulness. Sometimes we misconstrue fear as something that gives you license and liberty to do anything you want. I was in Calcutta. I took a taxi from the airport to Joka, and this guy is breaking all signals, signs, and he's just breakneck speed. He's moving towards the destination, flouting signals. So I said, "Sir, what is that you're doing?" He says, "Sir, I'm a racist." "You're a racist?" "Yeah, I like racing cars." I said, "All right." So he looks at me and then he says, "How about you?" I said, "I'm a fascist because I drive faculty and stuff." So his face he doesn't understand what I'm trying to say. Then he says, "What about the person sitting next to you?" I said, "He is my faculty. He gives marks and remarks. So he is a Marxist." So does that solve your problem? Now, fear is an essential commodity if you have to create order. The Upanishads talk about Mahat Bhayam. Mahat Bhayam means the grand fear in which planets stick to their orbits and in which everything moves in absolute synchronicity. Now, if you take away that fear, you take away the order along with the fear. There was a time when Singaporeans used to come to Calcutta to figure out how beautifully organized this city is all about. Singapore is run by Lee Kuan Yew, and I have had several conversations with him as to how order and fear often get confused. Now, who wants to compare Singapore and Calcutta today? See where we have gone. So you take away that component called carefulness, which is misconstrued as fear. A little bit of the other side of the fear is that it cripples creativity.
Yes.
So if you do not know where to stop, the foundation of fear has to end with the borderline of be careful. If you cross this line, there is a consequence. If you have no consequence, you have the kind of democracy that you see everywhere in the city.
Right.
Is this a city we dreamt of? I don't know. I leave that question to you rather than answer it.
Okay, sir. Kaushik, about career edge.
Just say something on the fear topic that he's talking about. I mean, in an organizational context, I mean, this, the earlier regime of my way or the highway, and let's say getting things done through some kind of negative stimuli, right? If you don't do it, this is the consequence, right?
Yes.
That, and with the newer generations of folks who are getting into the workforce today, and it's a multi-generation. We had a nice dinner discussion on the different Zens. I'm not going to go there, but nobody cares about don't tell me what the negative consequences are. People are looking for add value to me and motivate me. Give me oxygen, don't give me carbon dioxide.
Right.
And I think that's the difference between knowledge, which was in rarity and paucity, and therefore we were looking up for knowledge today. Now today, everybody, every conversation with my son is a reverse mentoring process. So what do I have to add value to him? What is my value add, right? So leadership today has a very, very different paradigm. The command control, fear will not work.
Right, Kaushik, I want to ask you about the career edge. You say that curiosity is very, very important in a career. Now we're talking about impactful and career with a purpose. Let me quote you. You say a curious mindset leads to deeper understanding, creative problem solving, and continuous self-improvement. But you know what the flip side is? Often seniors and bosses, if you ask questions, it's perceived as ignorance or insolence. I mean, a lot of people that I spoke to that you don't even know this. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. What is the significance of being curious with an impact in a career?
Look, I think curiosity is a brilliant thing. And I'll give you a story, again, a personal example. When we moved to Vietnam, our son had to move away from the Indian system to the IB system. And unfortunately, our education system is a little bit of a cram and vomit system, right? You do a lot of mugging and then you go and give an exam, right? So the question is, are you really creating curiosity? And then when we went to Vietnam, the IB system is very, very different. I mean, now, of course, we have it in India. And he was struggling. I mean, he was, the grades were not great. And as Indian parents, typically, we were saying, what happened to your grades? I mean, and he was basically, relax, take it easy. It's a very different system. But I love the way they are teaching. I love the way the courses are constructed. I love the work on finding out things myself. So that is curiosity, right? So the question to ask ourselves is, so curiosity is supremely important. Now back to your question of in an organization. I honestly believe, and it depends on the culture of the company. Right? And it's not the same. And in the company that I've worked for 24 years, we always look at people who have a point of view and who are curious to know how things are happening. So if you're in a meeting and you have a question, you have to ask that question. If you're in a meeting, doesn't matter. And the other thing is also a little bit like and I've worked with the Japanese and I've worked with the Americans, I can tell you it's very, very different in terms of how the process happens in a boardroom. But let's focus on the Western world right now. There is no, the senior most person is the one who's always right. And you have to always defer to what he or she is saying. And therefore, if I have a good idea or I have a question, I have to voice my opinion fearlessly. Voicing opinions fearlessly is a very, very important thing. It helps you clarify your doubt. It helps you also give the signal to everybody out there that you are present, you are mindful, and you have a point of view. So, again, my advice to folks is, and India is changing, and the corporate world is also changing. I think if you have an opinion, there is no dumb question. Honestly, you know what happens? I have had several times when I was starting off, I was holding back a question, somebody else asked it. Oh God, I had that question, I should have asked it myself, right? So, express yourself.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, don't do classroom participation. I've also seen that, which is people just ask questions for the sake of asking
Heck
questions.
of it, yes.
It needs to be relevant and it needs to be authentic and genuine.
Right.
Because authenticity and genuineness is something which is very, very important. So how you ask, when you ask, that is also important. Sometimes people are a little abrasive, right? So that's not good, right? So you got to doing it the right way, asking the right way.
Method to the madness, as it
But curiosity is great. Please foster curiosity. Back to that continuous learning thing I talked about.
Professor Debashis Chatterjee, the next question is to you, and it's considered very, very important in today's context, which is about, about going up the corporate ladder. And you say it's a chapter on desire, and you say while negotiating a promotion, this is for young people to say, do not hesitate on what you desire. Instead, focus on how you can increase your deserving quotient, whether you deserve it or not. But Professor, don't you think that that would be taken as sliding back from one's intended purpose? Why don't you elaborate on desire, which can lead to a positive impact in a purposeful career, sir?
First and foremost, again, the distinction between deserving and desiring is not necessarily of semantics. You have to see that, and I'll just give you an example. I see this, I'm in this Khandani sushi restaurant in Japan. It's called Sushi 10, and they serve only 10 people, and it's been around for 75 years. So I desire to have the best of Japanese food, but when I look at the menu card, the price is so prohibitive that I feel like getting out of the restaurant. But since I have an Indian flag on my jacket...
Could you hold it closer, Professor?
Yeah, since I have an Indian flag on my jacket, I thought, why insult my country? So I stay put. And the first thing I get on my plate is seaweeds. Then I get sushis in the form of octopus. This is an octopus laden, and I can't eat half of that. So when the bill comes, I enjoyed roughly half of it, not the rest of it. So when the bill comes, the lady watching me says, sir, here is your bill. And I'm surprised that the bill is only 1/8 of the menu price. So I ask her, there must be a calculation mistake. You've charged me much less. She says, no, I was observing you and I billed you for what you enjoyed, not what you ordered. And so you can see this struck me. That does this restaurant deserve to be a branded restaurant? You were not listening to me when I was finishing the story. Okay. So the point is that are you going to brand this institution, this restaurant, this institution called Sushi 10, based on how you mitigated desire or what you deserve? A customer deserves to get the best food for his palate for the price he paid. Now, if I now bring this to larger corporations and the education system, if you only met what the student is looking for, you can charge a fee. Otherwise, you can't charge a fee.
All right.
Imagine if this could be the criteria, then what kind of institutions would we have?
Wonderful. Yes.
So that's a connection, that's a link between the two.
All right. Also, now, MD and CEO Barundas, I think, wants to ask a question. Go ahead, sir.
Debashis, Kaushik, I want to learn something that you said, which I find there's a bit of a gap in my understanding, so I just want to get it clarified. And the purpose is to learn from you. Debashis, you talked about the order and fear.
Yeah.
So, but what I practice, what I feel, and that's what I want to ask you, that I think there are two levers which can work, not only fear. So I say either bhai or bhakti. Either of these two work. You gave me an example. I still don't know whether there is an SOP or a standard process to know where bhai would work, or internal motivation, if I may call it, and where fear would work. So that's a question for you. And Kaushik, the question again, some of my colleagues present here would have loved you, because you said that you need to ask questions. But in my opinion, asking an irrelevant question and keeping quiet, I would always encourage someone to do the latter, not the first one. So I think while being vocal is important, but being relevant and being on the context is also important, isn't it?
Well, shall I take the first? You know, the thing is, I go back to Lee Kuan Yew because this example I gave you from Singapore. Now, I have had several conversations with him. My first conversation was when a British journalist was interviewing him for what he did in Singapore. He was asked this question that you made so many election promises, but you did not keep many of them. And she had a record, dossier of promises he did not keep. He said, you are a student of politics. You must know that in politics there is a distinction between rhetoric and reality. You win an election with rhetoric, but you have to address reality. So what you call bhai and bhakti, essentially I would use the word love instead of bhakti. I say, let's say fear and love.
Self-respect.
Yeah, so fear and love would be like in-breath and out-breath of an organization.
And if I may say, that I feel that I would try the bhakti path first. If it doesn't work, fear is the second lever that I'll apply.
Well, it's not an either or, Barun. I think there's a slight, it's not an either or thing. You know, fear is not what you cause. Fear is what is inherent in human nature. When we were mammalians, we had to have fear to protect ourselves, right? But that protective instinct, if it grows inward and become internalized as fear, then you lose your humanness, your creativity. But if it is not present externally, that's why you have cops everywhere. Not because, see, just to finish this example from Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore. So in the middle of the night, I'm crossing a road in Orchard Road, and this is an American friend of mine who stops me on my tracks. He said, look, the signal is red. I said, there's nobody on the street, not a single vehicle. What if I just cross over? It's commonsensical. He says, no, you'll be fine. I said, who will report this? He said, I have to report this. I said, you have to report this? So policing has been internalized. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that even Lee Kuan Yew learned at his later age. You know, Singapore was built with a lot of austerity, and during their annual day, students were bursting crackers, and they had spent about a few $1 million on bursting crackers. So Lee Kuan Yew was asked this question, why did you not stop them? They're wasting their money. He said, I also believe they're wasting their money, but we have to remain relevant for the new generation. So you have to understand that this is a dichotomy that you have to deal with. Without fear, you cannot have an organization. Barun, whatever you may say.
Thank you. No, I am agreeing to you. All I'm saying that's my second option.
Appreciate your question, though. Yeah, go ahead.
And I started by saying, don't do classroom participation. Now, I'll give you cultural examples. I worked in Asia Pac. If you go to a meeting in Asia Pac, right, people don't talk, and people don't ask questions. I had and I'll give you another example of team dynamics. I had a team which was somebody from Colombia, somebody from Guatemala, somebody from Venezuela, somebody from China, somebody from the UK. The Chinese person never spoke. He had all the right questions and maybe the right ideas and the right comments. And I had to say, literally, I had to tell the Colombian guy, please, thank you very much. We heard you, right? He was a garrulous fellow, kept talking. And I had to ask, Andrew, why don't you come up? And then he came with a brilliant idea. It's also cultural. Now, Indians, we all know argumentative Indians. You put 10 Indians in one room, and I can tell you about, because I've worked elsewhere, right? They will have 10 different points of view, and everybody is very passionate about their point of view, right? Everybody has two points to offer for sure. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about genuine, authentic curiosity. I'm talking about voicing your opinion fearlessly. Voicing your opinion fearlessly is going to be a very, very important part of an organization's culture. And sorry, but beg to differ from both of you on this concept of fear. Okay, fear is like carbon dioxide, does not build culture, does not deliver results in the sustained long run. Plus, we are all a function of our generation. Do unto others have done unto you. That leadership style is not going to work with the younger folks. And let's ask the folks at the back of the room, are they going to be inspired by motivation, inspiration, guidance, coaching, mentorship, hand-holding, or my way or the highway, being told what to do? The bosses who have got the best out of me have been people who have empowered me, have been people who have trusted me, have been people who have allowed me to fail. There is this big concept now. If I contextualize fear and performance, right? If we don't create a culture which has a safety net we will never allow people to fail. And if people don't fail, you don't learn.
Barun, sorry.
He's
Barun,
Kaushik.
Barun is there.
No, Barun, sorry, not Barun, sorry.
Kaushik.
Kaushik, fear of not living my full potential is the only reason why people do extraordinary things. I had a little note from Sunil Gavaskar, who was supposed to write an endorsement for my book, Invincible Arjun. He said, I'm going to write an endorsement from Australia. I'm doing a commentary. He did not. So after 3 months, I said, sir, your thing hasn't come. I'm in West Indies. I will send it to you once I'm in America. I said, sir, the publishers are saying this is the timeline. So he said, I'm sorry, Debashis, I already wrote you an endorsement, but I was scared to send it to you until I perfected it. The scare was that how can Sunil Gavaskar send a substandard endorsement to an IM director? That is Sunil Gavaskar's fear.
Right.
That's
Right.
what
I
I'm
think-
talking about.
I think
and you
Kaushik-
have misunderstood me completely.
Debashis, you should go back to your discussions. Sudhaji, please take it up. Accepting that, Kaushik, I'll take it up offline with you, that you have respect for law or fear for law. We'll take it up from there.
Thank you, Varun. Professor, I'll come back to you. It's very important for all the young people and, of course, everybody who's sitting right at the back. This is about mindfulness, okay? Now, what happens is that we all get stuck in some organizations with labels. Oh, he always comes late. He's very lazy. He's a slacker. He's giving excuses. You know, all this happens. Now, we do get labeled. We may not hear of it, but we come to know about it. Now we get mired in this and we are unable to break the shackles in a career like that. What do we do? Because anything I do, he's going to call me that only because I did this 10 years ago. The thing is, how does one navigate around it, Professor? Because we just, you know, even if I change my job, they will say, oh, the lazy one has come back, you know. So what does one do?
See, the labels are not going to stick if you, what you might call a crisis of perception. So the issue of perception is that a spider is crawling on your back and you know it's a spider. You're not going to not going to Google and find out whether this is an Amazonian spider or an African spider. You're simply going to jump off your chair and move it. So there's something called a crisis of perception. You can call it Kalidas syndrome. And I'll give you the example of another guy. He was mentioning Swami Chinmayananda. He was traveling with his father's asthi kalas, father's dead body ashes. And he looked at this bowl and he said, my father was walking around and has become condensed to a bowl now. Is that going to be the end of my life? So if somebody is called a duffer, somebody is called a Kalidas who's chopping his own tree, there must be a time when this fellow faces what you might describe as crisis of perception in terms of what you call crystallization of discontent. My discontent has reached a point where I cannot but just turn around. Until that point comes, labels stick to you. And then you want to get out of, I've seen so many people among my students who were late starters. You know, they were not doing too well in the first 5 years. So I would tell them, don't come for the 10th students reunion, come only for the 15th, by which time you will have run you're a lambi race ka ghora, you will have run your race. Then you will know what Amish Tripathi was a case in point. I taught him in IIM Calcutta. And you will see that, you know, his career would map. He was not considered a very exciting banker, but when it came to writing, he really broke the new ground.
I've had the privilege of editing him, and yes.
I taught him a business ethics course.
Yeah.
He bunked half the course. That's probably he became a writer, but that's another story.
Right. Okay, Kaushik, let's turn to you. This is, ladies and gentlemen, what a fascinating title. When I read this, I actually kind of went back and read it again. This is about adaptability. This is about, like, if I'm transferred from Kolkata to Chennai, usually, you know, those young people out there, unless I'm transferred to Singapore or Hong Kong, I'll say, Chennai jete hobe ar ki korbo, like we say in Bengali. But this is a story about adaptability. You know, one of the keys of having a satisfying career. Talk about it, Kaushik, how you had a problem when you had to go from Gurgaon to Chennai, and you changed it completely into an opportunity, and the title of the book, title of the chapter, as it were. Please.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I think adaptability is not only something which drives success in the professional world, but I think it is also a life skill. And this particular, I've had many stories like that, but we went from Gurgaon to Chennai and in the same company, and the culture was so different. I'm not going to get into the details, but basically, I almost thought at one point in time that I'm completely an outsider, although I'm in the same organization. And at one point in time, I was saying, okay, maybe I should quit. And I then realized that the problem was not with my environment. The problem was in my own head. I was expecting everybody around me to change. And this is something in life that we will get situations and you can't choose your boss, you cannot choose your team, you cannot choose your situation. Business is doing well, business is not doing well. When you get into the role, you cannot choose that. Right. Therefore, the battle is in your mind. And the question is, what difference does the difference make? Right. And the question is, the answer is, you need to adapt to your situation. You need to change yourself rather than expecting the situation and others to change for you.
Right.
And that insight in Chennai has helped me everywhere, because everywhere I went, it was 3 or 4 degrees of change, right? And the battle is in your own mind. And, that was a big unlock for career success. For everybody starting off, I would say focus on adaptability.
And the chapter title?
Yeah?
The chapter title, From the Balcony to the Dancing
The Balcony to the Dance Floor, yeah. I mean, correct. I mean, all our lives, I mean, think of professional life as the action is happening on the dance floor. What I call the dance floor, which is, where the gravity is and what keeps us down. We are busy. We are always busy.
Right.
Who cares if you're busy or not? Nobody cares whether you're busy, right? People want you to be available. Okay, I'm a CFO, I can tell you, we don't produce, we don't sell. So what on earth am I doing as a function? And I keep reminding, the finance function, that it's our job to create shareholder value, right? And therefore, we can't be busy. The finance function is turning on the lights and turning off the lights at the end of the day. I've seen that everywhere. And we feel great about it. We are working hard. Who cares you're working hard?
Right.
So how do you move from being busy to being available is another mantra, if we can really master that. And honestly, I believe artificial intelligence can help us do that.
Right.
Can really help us do that.
Yeah, the buzzer's gone, so I think I'll just take, I perhaps have 1 minute, Shweta, do I? Or we are done? 1 minute? Yeah, concluding remarks, Professor Chatterjee. One difference that you find, I mean, I do not demarcate people by Gen Z and Gen whatever, but I'm asking you, you've seen a batch of students over decades. Do you see that one difference that demarcates students who've come to you in the last 5 years as against those who've come to you 10 years ago?
Well, my average age is 23 because that's the time kind of students I meet all the time. The thing is that there is an audacity in their orientation to life which we lacked in our previous generations. There is a sense that time is short, life is contingent, and you must make an impact as quickly as possible. And so I think that is extraordinary, except that it has to be tempered, I think, with a little bit of wisdom, which is what this 1 minute wisdom is all about. Right? Thank you for asking that question.
Give it up for, ladies and gentlemen, for Professor Chatterjee and for Kaushik Mitra. What a riveting session. I think you young guys can be louder, no?
Yes.
Yeah, let's hear it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's
What
hear
a
it from the
lovely
young
audience.
people at the back.
Yes, thank you very much, both. I think it was very interesting. Hope you enjoyed it. I wanted to ask you about Kurkure, Kaushik Mitra, but then I didn't have the right time. But any time for Kurkure, this is the man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.